So, folks,
Okay.
guess what? It's almost the end of the show, y'all. You finally made it. You went the entire day of some really great content. I mean, some of the things that I learned today that were absolutely fantastic was hearing from Bear about evangelizing to native mobile. I know for a lot of us in this room, many of us are just starting to get going and doing mobile developer evangelism. Some of those pragmatic tips were absolutely fantastic. I thought hearing more about the moral imperatives that we have as community leaders from Tim was really great. Some of the war stories from Brandon was fantastic. Hearing Brother Adam preach about the importance of content definitely hit me right in the feels. And of course, Josh kicking us off with a great history of developer evangelism, all starting with the little screw that's holding together every seat that you're sitting on right now. I thought was a fantastic day. None of this would have been possible without the hard work of Matthew, Arun, and Tamau. So I'd like a big round of applause for them, if you wouldn't mind. There is, to my knowledge, no one in the world trying to put together a community meetup where practitioners of this trade called developer evangelism can get together and talk about our craft. And they did it by opening their hearts. They did it by opening their wallets. So if you have the opportunity to thank them today, I hope you would do that. And lastly, I'd just like to thank all of you folks for coming out. I hope you know and are as convicted as I am that the community that we serve, the developers, the folks that are building this information economy, are going to be responsible for crafting what the citizen's life looks like for the rest of our lives. And these 21.3 million developers are going to wield perhaps the greatest reach that human history has ever seen. And for the 21,000 people that are serving them in a community building capacity, it represents a opportunity that has not been seen in human history before. And just having the opportunity to spend a gorgeous Saturday in San Francisco talking with each of you about your experience has been deeply fulfilling for me, and I'd just like to thank you guys for coming out, if that's cool. All right, let's talk about measurement. I wanted to bring out the beer beforehand because this is a fairly difficult topic for a lot of folks to talk about. For me, it's a difficult thing to talk about because I'm Irish, and anytime a ruler gets brought out, it also brings to the surface some unresolved childhood trauma that comes from Catholic school. I think it's also a difficult thing to talk about because most of the time when measurement is brought up in a developer outreach context, it's punitive, right? You hear from a boss who asks you the question, so how are you measuring the success of your program? And almost always, that statement is immediately followed by some radical changes that usually have a detrimental effect on the community that you're trying to serve. And finally, I think it's difficult to talk about measurement because it's difficult to do. Developers are many things, but one of the things that they aren't are folks that want to get measured in any way. Right? You folks know the difficulties as well as I do. They never use promo codes. It doesn't matter how valuable they are, if they're for a conference or if they're for a product, they just never use them. They remove UTM links from nearly every link that we put on the internet. I'm not kidding, this happened to us last month. We had the bright idea of tuning up some old Stack Overflow posts with some more helpful updated links to new documentation that we felt fit questions better on Stack Overflow, and a community member went through and got rid of all of them, thus deleting our ability to measure the success of that particular campaign. And they also browse the internet using Tor and using JavaScript blockers that will destroy the accuracy of any web analytics tool that you try to use. So in short, because I grew up Irish and the conversations that I've had in the workplace around measurement have not been good, and the fact that it's so difficult, I think those are probably all contributing reasons why the discussion of measurement is so difficult for our business, right? And I feel this is likely to cause all of us to pull Luke Skywalker in the trench and just turn off the targeting computer altogether and just use the Force. All right. I'm not going to call anyone out in the audience today by asking folks if they measured their programs at all. It is a sin I think anybody in developer relations has committed, and so we can just agree as a group that turning off the targeting computer is something that we've all done. But I'd like to share with you, if I can, a personal story about why I've gotten some religion about measurement and why I think it's important, and it's not for the reason that you might think, right? Most folks, when you're talking about measurement in a developer evangelism context, are talking about justifying their existence to the rest of the organization. I'm not sure how many of you saw on Twitter the survey results that Tamao sent out yesterday looking for topics that folks would like to talk about. One of the big ones was like, how do I justify my existence to the rest of the organization? Which is certainly a scary one, and I know one that's felt a lot. And it's certainly not to impress the boss. The reason why I think measurement is really important in developer outreach is from a conversation I had when I first started serving the developer evangelism team at Twilio in a leadership capacity. When one of the members of the team, who was coming up on a year, described his job as Groundhog Day. So if any of you are familiar with the Bill Murray movie, there's a poorly watched Bill Murray movie called Groundhog Day, where a disgruntled weatherman wakes up and experiences the same day over and over, February 2nd, ad nauseum, until he learns some very heart-touching life lessons, learns to love again, and opens up his heart. And this particular developer evangelist described the job in this context, right? Every single day, he told me, Rob, I wake up, I say goodbye to my wife and family, I go to some crazy place, and I do a big song and dance in front of a bunch of people, and then I go home, and the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that is exactly the same, and I have absolutely no idea whether or not what I'm doing has an impact. All right? Now, the hotel might be different. It's usually not better. It may be different. The conference may be better attended or poorly attended. The food might be better on the airplane, but every day feels basically the same. And this particular developer evangelist, who was coming up on his one-year anniversary, did not feel super great about the experience of his job so far, mostly because he had absolutely no idea whether or not he was having an impact. So what I'd like to have a facilitated conversation with all of you about today is the topic of measurement, and I don't think it's important to justify the existence of your team. I don't think it's important to impress your boss. The reason why I feel measurement is so important is because it makes your team happier in their job. Right? And it's from that context and that motivation that I'd like to talk a little bit about measurement. My name is Rob Spectre. I do have the privilege of serving the developer network crew at a company called Twilio. We're a cloud communications firm based just a block and a half away here in San Francisco, but I live and work in the greatest city in the world, New York. And if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to take the next 20 minutes or so, and we're going to talk a little bit together about measurement, and then we're going to bring some of the other fantastic speakers that we've had up today and do a group Q&A as a whole. Does that sound good to you? You think that'll work? Okay, cool. I would like to highlight this is a discussion. This isn't a presentation. As you have questions, or more importantly, as you have a comment about something that you see, just raise your hand and shout it out, and we can finish out the day right before beer with a good, riveting conversation about charts and graphs. Does that sound good? Yeah. Cool. So where I'd like to kind of take the discussion is to first talk about where to start. If you're not measuring at all, where are the places to begin? Then talk about some of the bad metrics that certainly we've gone through at Twilio that absolutely do not work, that are likely to be tempting to each of you. And then finish up with some good metrics that we know have results in building developer networks. So first, talking about where to start, there is a model that we developed as a team around maturity of data orientation. And if I may spare you guys an animated pyramid graph for a moment, I hope it'll make a little more sense what this is all about. So the idea is to have some sort of model of where you fit on the spectrum of having absolutely no knowledge at all and having metaphysical certainty about everything that's going to occur, right? And by placing your organization in that model, you can have a better sense of where to attack next. So the biggest group in the entire bunch are the folks that are using the Force. They have absolutely no measurement at all. They're just using their gut intuition. And the likelihood of their program lasting more than 2 or 3 years is fairly low. There is a smaller group that is also large who operate the program off of data, right? And data is unfiltered, barely summed, barely averaged, rows and columns of data. These are the folks that are running their entire program off of a spreadsheet, right? This spreadsheet is infrequently updated, usually has a lot of manual errors, and only visibility to the data contained therein is usually delivered to the team once a quarter. There's a smaller group that take that data and turn it into information. So they apply simple filters or pivot on specific dimensions that have some relevance to what the developer outreach as a whole is doing. These reports usually can be generated every month and have the capability of giving you, some sort of insight directionally of whether or not your outreach is having a positive or negative effect on a particular dimension. Fewer still, distill that information into knowledge. And these are folks that get weekly updates on whether or not what they're doing is working at all, right? These are the folks that have a good sense of how good an execution was if they don't have a good predictive sense of how good an execution can be. And then finally, the pinnacle of the whole pyramid, wisdom. These are the folks that can take a look at a particular outcome and match it with a particular output reliably, day in and day out over the course of their program. The information that is surfaced here, the wisdom that is surfaced here, is decentralized to the entire team and usually available in daily dashboards. Does this kind of make sense to where you might sit? I might ask you mentally to point out where you sit and to remove any illusion that Twilio is on the top of this pyramid. I feel we're solidly in the information stage right now, sometimes peeking over to knowledge. And where I'd like to take the organization this year, and what we've committed to as a team, is to try to get more into knowledge, peeking into wisdom. Cool. So with that in mind, where to start after you have made an honest assessment about where you are in terms of maturity as an organization is to pick the next level and do 2 things. The first thing that you want to do is buy visibility into the next level, okay? Analytics tools are incredibly expensive, and you're going to get laughed at a lot when you start bringing some of the bills of these tools to your boss. The reason why analytics tools are expensive is because they are measuring it against the fully loaded cost of a software engineer to build that same insight, right? You wonder how Adobe gets away with charging $210,000 a year for Omniture. The reason why is they know that a single engineer costs basically the same amount in the Bay Area, and that single engineer is not going to be able to produce that level of a product in under a year. The recommendation I always make here is start small. If you have nothing, choose something that's free. Like Google Analytics. If you have Google Analytics and you're unsure of whether or not the data is working, purchase something like Mixpanel or Heap, something just a step above. If you have Mixpanel or Heap and aren't getting what you're looking for, upgrade to Google Analytics Premium or go to Omniture. If you do have a tool that you feel really good about, but you're not sure the data is okay, another way you can buy visibility into the next level of insight is just by hiring a consultant. Right? There are a ton of data doctors out there. You are not the first person to mess up your Google Analytics install, and for 50 to 60 grand, you can get bailed out of that situation easily. The way to frame the conversation around buying visibility is the equivalent cost for the engineering team that you work with. Right? $60,000 to a marketing manager may sound like it's 3 or 4 hackathons, right? But framing it instead as 3 or 4 engineers worth of effort can quickly change the conversation into your favor. What you should spend time building, right? The bit of insight that you should ask your engineering team to invest in is improving the frequency of the information that you just bought, right? So if you're moving to data to information, your goal with engineering effort is to make sure that that information can get reduced by a substantial portion to every single member of your team. So if you are getting quarterly reports right now, build so you can get monthly reports. If you have monthly reports, see if you can get it down weekly. And if you can get it down to real-time data that you can watch during the hackathon as it unfolds, you know you're getting closer to wisdom on the pyramid. Well, it's really important here to emphasize progress over perfection, right? I'm not sure how many folks have seen Twitch Plays Pokemon, but I can tell you when I started walking down this road, it felt a lot like that. In the sense that I was trying to play a game that seemed pretty simple to me, and it seemed like everybody on the internet was trying to keep me from being able to win. It was a very intense process, and one that you shouldn't get discouraged about. Progress is more important than perfection to your team. Even getting directional information, how you're doing year over year on a few individual bits of metrics are better than having nothing at all. I feel a lot of folks who start looking at measurement for the first time say like, well, if I can't get a dashboard that spits out the ROI number immediately, it's worthless. That's not the case, right? Closed loop reporting, particularly with a cloud tool, is fucking hard. It's really, really difficult to do. And there are not a lot of companies that can do it. Having the immediate ability over the space of a current day to estimate how much your customer acquisition cost is and subtract it from your LTV is something that takes a long time and an entire company to commit to, right? That's not the place that you need to get in order for your people to know whether or not what they're doing is working. Does that make sense? I swear to God, if no one comments or asks a question, we're going to watch some Patriots videos. It's going to happen. I swear to God. So bad metrics. What are some bad metrics? What are some bad metrics? What are some metrics that you should absolutely not have in your program? Sales. You should not have like deal size, right? Or count of sales is definitely not worthwhile. Pipeline can sometimes be useful depending on the context, but certainly not having a quota, right? What's another terrible metric? Raw output. Oh my gosh, look at this. Production metrics, right? Raw output of content, number 1 on our example hit list. That's right. How many blog posts you put out? I think the guideline that Adam suggested that if you're starting from nothing, you should at least do 2. Really, really wise approach, right? But going from 2 to 5 isn't the thing that you're going to be looking for, right? The thing that you're going to be looking for is the amount of traffic and engagement that that content produces. What are some other terrible metrics that people use all the time? Conference leads, how many badges that you scanned. Another example of that is like how many meetings with people you had, right? As folks that have ever worked the accelerator circuit well know, getting meetings is pretty damn easy to do, right? And racking up that number is not difficult. Another one is audience size, right? Like how many people you talk to at a particular event or how many badges that you scan. Another one that folks do all the time, mostly because it's super easy to do, is number of events, right? Oh, well, we did 400 events last year. That made a significant difference. And another one that some folks have brought up just in conversation today that I added to this deck was apps and stores. Let's look for a moment why all of these production metrics don't work. Come on, Google Analytics map. Oh no. Everybody can see my JSON. This is not great. Let's see if we can debug this right quick. Refresh. Oh yeah, right. Oh hey, there we go. Totally got a map. So let's talk about events. So last year, the Dev Network crew at Twilio did 394 events, and when I think about that number, I think of all the Twilio love that we spread around the entire world. I look at the map and I'm like, oh man, that's a lot of logos. That's really impressive. My CFO, predictably, has a different view of this. He looks at this map and he says, oh, look at that, all that great Twilio money spread all over the planet Earth, and I have no idea what it's doing, right? The problem with production metrics is you're starting the conversation with the rest of the organization about the effectiveness of your program on cost, right? If you talk about how many events you did, the natural question is going to be how much all of that costs. When you start by talking about production metrics, you're starting to talk about your program in terms of the amount of money it's burned, which is never a good place to be. Apps and stores, this is another terrible metric, and it's one that usually comes from a chicken and egg problem, right? I've talked to a number of Microsoft evangelists here. I hope they don't mind if I call this out, but there was a very long period where every evangelist at Microsoft was, their performance was judged entirely on how many apps they were able to get into the Windows Store, mostly because there weren't any apps in the store yet, and they felt that the only way in order to drive adoption of the phone is if they had a bunch of apps. So when you're faced with a chicken and egg scenario like that, you have to make crazy decisions around production applications. I think if you ask them, they felt like they didn't have the capability of having much of an effect on how many developers produced an app for a store because no one was buying Windows phones, and a developer evangelist didn't have a lot of effect on whether or not people adopted that particular consumer device. The reason why apps and stores is bad when you're trying to build a double-sided marketplace is because one of the biggest factors, and according to Evan's data, 35% of developers look first when trying to decide to target to a platform the market size of that individual platform itself, right? The number of apps isn't going to dramatically increase the number of developers that are on the platform. The only thing that's going to have an effect on whether or not developers deliver anything for your platform is if anybody fucking uses it, right? So holding developer evangelists to this goal obviously has a big mistake. Quotas, Matthew called out sales. So why is having a quota bad for a developer evangelism team? Josh feels like he wants to say something. You do get demoralized very quickly. All right, and a few folks, go ahead, bud. Chris, right? Craig. Gotcha. Stud. Yeah, sales quotas. Like you're responsible for closing a certain number of deals. I'm happy to look at The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the Google Cloud Platform is a really good example of how the apps and stores like function doesn't necessarily work, right? Killing the elephants is not something that an evangelist is particularly good at. Like killing the elephants is something that a sales organization is good at. And if they do kill a couple of elephants, it's going to make it a lot easier for developers to drive that adoption, right? What would have saved the Windows App Store, in my personal opinion, is getting more hardware manufacturers than the one that they bought to build devices for it, is my sense. Right? Developers are not going to target a platform that no one is using. They have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of effort to work with, and optimizing for market size, in my opinion, is the key. Which I think is a shame because WebOS was pretty rad. It was great. It was great to develop on. Yeah. I think that's a great thing to share. Yeah. You're gonna have to talk super loud, partner. That's cool. I mean, if you want to work at GoDaddy, it's cool, dude. I'm kidding. I feel that that would have had a more pronounced effect on the Windows Phone adoption than the long tail that a developer evangelism program would go. Gotcha. Gotcha. So to try to repeat, to try to repeat some of the feedback, when they were first working on the Microsoft Store, the lack of any of the brand name applications was a deterrent from people adopting the platform, which I certainly think is true. And I think the way that the Windows Phone team addressed this the strongest is when they just built the apps themselves. For example, the Foursquare application that was available on Windows Phone was the best, I think still the best experience for Foursquare that has existed, right? And I think probably building more of those apps yourselves as opposed to trying to chase long-tail developers would have had a pronounced effect. We're almost up on time, and then we're going to bring up some folks. I just wanted to get through a few good metrics, if that's okay. Would that be okay? Is that all right? Hey, Rob said we should have a conversation, and then he cut it off. That person has a weird voice. So let's just hop to and talk about some practical metrics. Here are 3 things that you can do right now with simple web analytics to measure the effectiveness of your team if you're not doing anything already, okay? One big one is engaged traffic. And for this, I'm going to share a couple recent stories that we had for some technical content that we produced. So we're going to talk about 2 blog posts. They both had about the same amount of traffic. They were both like moderate, like Reddit hits. They ended up on the front page of a popular subreddit. One was Twilio related, one was not. The first one was Twilio related. It was an MMS-powered Pokedex. It totally works. If you send a text message to this number up on the screen with the name of a Pokemon, you'll get back a picture of that Pokemon and some of the relevant statistics for that Pokemon's abilities. This, after the day after it was published, was featured in a popular subreddit, got about 6,500 uniques total. The second one that we'll talk about is one that didn't have anything to do with Twilio at all, right? It was an exploration of the new await statement that is intended to change the asynchronous programming paradigm in ES7. The reason why I chose this selection is because the author described async await as the hero JavaScript deserves. Hey, it's Batman. It's funny. Got about the same amount of traffic, just about 500 folks more. It had a good plug on Twitter the day it was published, and then a little bit after ended up on the JavaScript subreddit. So you have 2 posts. One has to do something with Twilio. One doesn't. Which one do you feel, based on the same amount of traffic, which one do you feel is the most valuable for Twilio? The second one, the JavaScript one, why would you say the second one?
It goes to people who are not already using Twilio.
It does go to people who are not already using Twilio, and more importantly, it attracted quality traffic. It attracted real developers. So if you take a look at the performance of the average time on page, so this is the average amount of time that a user spent on the Pokedex post, you can see that the average over a given period of time, and the y-axis here is seconds, was 2 minutes and 27 seconds. So this is about a minute less than the blog average as a whole. You compare that to the JavaScript post, people were sticking around a lot longer. They stuck around for 6 minutes, 10 seconds, which is quite a bit higher than the blog average. The reason why this was significant was because the hit that the Pokedex posts made was on the Pokemon subreddit. Which was a collection of traffic that I think we could charitably describe as non-technical, right? JavaScript posts, even though it had absolutely nothing to do with Twilio, guaranteed that we were going to get 7,000 developers in. And by virtue of capturing that developer's attention and keeping them on the page for 6 minutes, which is 6 times the site average, by the way, it served as a leading indicator of success later when the Google juice started to kick in. The first slope on the graph is the Pokemon post, which you can see had a really good first day and then trailed off for the 6 months that followed the publication of that post, compared to what happened to the JavaScript post, which started accumulating a crap load of Google juice the next month, to the degree that every month it gets just 1,000 unique visitors shy of what it did when it made it as a hit on Reddit, right? It is indeed evergreen. I mean, I'm told that you can make the Pokemon post anytime you want, but I think probably more to the point, it was great. Well, first of all, it was a really well-written post by Eddie Zaneski, and 2, the average time on page has seemed for us over the course of the 700 blog posts that we have to correspond with high performance on Google Juice later. Like, we do the same stuff on SEO for every single blog post. For some reason, I'm sure Google is tracking it. The ones that have higher time on page are the ones that rank better. Cool. I think we are up on time. So if you would like to talk a little bit more about some of these other metrics, would love to wrap with you about it. Why don't we get a few more folks up, and we'll open up the floor to a real Q&A on measurement. Sound good?